I agree that the death of Charlie Kirk really precipitated that. That is what was the spark that is just caused the right to have this divide and melt down and cause fear, and maybe that changed some people's views. All of a sudden, they don't want to get killed either. It's all awful. I would say though, you've seen far right violence too. Nancy Pelosi was attacked in her home.
That wasn't right wing.
Nancy Pelosi's husband.
But that wasn't right wing.
Well, it was a guy who was.
We never know what happened at the end with that one.
Who broke into the house and hit him with a hammer.
But it was.
It's not a conservative.
But he was going after Pelosi for a reason. He was
yes, but liberals don't like Pelosi
Pelosi.
too. So this is the problem with saying it's right wing. A guy who shows up to a Charlie Kirk event is not breaking into the Pelosi house, hitting him with a hammer. A guy who shows up to an AOC event is. The people who are going to AOC rallies made videos celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder.
Oh, and I condemn all that in the loudest possible terms.
The point is, you can't compare progressive activists who engage in direct action with a wackaloon drug addict who believes stupid shit.
Well, and
that's not right wing.
What about the Vance Butler guy, the guy who killed those?
Yeah, that's not a right wing thing either.
Or in Minnesota,
I don't understand how on one hand you're going to say that Candace Owens can now be considered a liberal because her criticisms align with some liberal and left criticisms of the right in this country, the GOP, Trump, etc. But then when it comes to somebody attacking Nancy and Paul Pelosi, which obviously aligns far more with the right, you're not going to say that. You're going to say that that's just a crazy person.
Position. Someone attacking someone else does not indicate political position.
Not necessarily, but in this particular case,
yeah,
so we know that he was politically motivated.
He wasn't an activist. He wasn't a campaigner for any right-wing causes.
You don't have to be an activist to be politically motivated in your shooting.
Okay, then let's stop right here. Let's pause real quick, and I'll make sure we all understand the distinction. Violence from the left is often from ideological individuals trying to advance a cause. What you describe as violence from the right seems to be random. If that's the distinction we're making, then that's fine.
But when you say that, you're still conceding that's violence from the right. You're making it sound like no violence from the right ever occurs.
So I'm giving you the language to say this. Let's clarify. Followers of Charlie Kirk and Donald Trump rarely are going out and attacking people for their ideological cause. Sometimes a conservative may attack somebody. We had that attack at the church in Michigan, and the guy was a conservative, but he did not attack the Mormon church for conservative reasons, for ideological reasons. He did it because of debts and some personal beef he had with the Mormons. But he's got an American flag and a Trump sign on his car, and they say, see, right-wing violence. Hold on. Sometimes right-wing people attack other people quite a bit. Sometimes left-wing people attack people quite a bit. Political violence, I'm clarifying right now just for the sake of the argument, is when an individual engages in violence for the purpose of advancing an ideology.
Cesar Sayak
is, by the way.
Yes.
Cesar Sayak, he's the guy who lives in a van in South Florida who mailed bombs to prominent Democrats and members of the media.
It does happen, indeed.
Yeah.
So when you look at these charts, let me show you this from the ADL heat map, my favorite example of this.
Where they classified Islamic terrorism as right wing, wasn't that one
Let me show you the narrative machine. Here's why I have a problem with how this is all described. Okay, the Anti-Defamation League has their heat map: hate, extremism, anti-Semitism, and terror. I believe it is. Ideology: right wing is white supremacist. Wait, hold on. Why is white supremacy right wing? Racial identitarianism is irrespective of your policy positions, and the left have racial identitarians as well. So why is that? Look, left wing. They actually say, for simplicity's sake, it also includes black nationalist extremists. No, hold on. Now, hold on. Like a black nationalist who wants a nation of black people who believes in Christianity and that women shouldn't be allowed to vote is left wing? No one's going to accept that. This makes no sense, okay? So you've got right-wing white supremacists, right-wing other, right-wing anti-government. They actually, in some circumstances, will put anarchist left, anarcho-communists as right-wing. So this is the problem. If you have three categories of what right-wing is, and you include specifically racial identitarianism and anti-government, you're just inflating a list of what you describe as right-wing. But if we want to actually understand what is left and right, I would argue it like this. How about we call it Democrat-aligned, Republican-aligned? And I say aligned because I don't like the Republican Party. I think they're trash, but clearly I'm Republican-aligned. If there is somebody who aligns with the political ideology of the Republicans, and they engage in violence to pursue those ends, I would call that right wing. If there is somebody whose political ideology aligns to the Democratic Party and they engage in violence for the purpose of pursuing that ideology, I'd call that left wing. I think that's how we'd break it down.
Yeah.
If you break it down that way, you will find that the right commits substantially less violence than the left.
How does it compare if you put the right wing anti-government, which I think it's fair, like anti-government.
Patriot movement, Oath Keepers, sovereign
Yeah,
citizens,
but how many of
and
those
tax
are
protests.
there? How many of those are there actually? Just those.
Anti-government
You exclude
survivalists.
Click apply.
2. No, 3. Let's see. Actually, those dots are actually
so that
more
is
than
how
one.
many anti-government ones.
Does that
there.
include January 6th?
No.
That's the thing that I was going to ask next. We're like talking about how like the right doesn't engage in political violence, and we just had the.
I didn't say they didn't. I said it's just less than the left.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I think the
It's
rioters on
primarily coming
J6
from the
should have gone to
left
prison,
then,
and they did.
Regardless of
And
how
they
the
got pardoned,
ADL
yeah.
classifies these
After
things and
3
their
years, I think that was
methodology,
warranted.
the more important thing to me is not long after the Charlie Kirk shooting, I remember there was an article from The Guardian that the Trump admin on a .gov website had like quietly deleted it was some sort of study aggregating political violence in this country that had found there was disproportionately more political violence coming from the right than on the left.
And why'd they delete it?
And I don't know. But the
Because
point is
it
that the
included-
findings showed that
because
the
it-
right, there was more
incorrect.
violence on the right.
Because it included a white supremacist who punched his wife as a case of right-wing political extremism, which is the point I'm making. There is no value presented to the American people by creating a list where you're going to claim a white supremacist redneck in a trailer punched his wife, so we're going to put it on a map of right-wing extremism. That doesn't inform
That's domestic
anybody.
But
violence, not
even if
terrorism.
like
But,
you,
but it doesn't inform people about what our threats really are.
Right.
Regardless of that, The Atlantic has already published the left is more violent than the right as of this year. So by whatever metric you want to go by, currently the left has taken the
what
cake.
did the Atlantic publish?
The left is now more likely to engage in violence. Let me pull it up. And it's not even about the Atlantic. It's it's not even the Atlantic. It's tons of other sites. You got the Atlantic. You've got
Left-wing terrorism is on the
CSIS.
rise, yeah.
Well, on the rise is different than saying that it's coming
For the
primarily
first time
from
in
the
more than
left.
30 years, attacks by the far left outnumber those by the far right. Subhead.
What's the methodology? Do you mind scrolling down and reading a little
Oh,
bit
no,
of it?
no, we don't care about methodology because, like you already said, if a white supremacist punches his wife,
No, I care about
Increases.
methodology. That's why
not
I'm
on the study
saying,
from the. No,
that's
no,
why
no,
I'm
no,
saying,
you don't. No, you don't. When the
That's why I'm
White
saying
House,
that the ADL
when the
is
White
not
House
one
cared
to
about
be
the
trusted
methodology,
because I
you said
probably
he should have
agree
taken
with
it
you.
down.
Wait,
So the
sorry?
study is
When
a
the White House
CSIS
took down
study.
flawed methodology, you disagreed with it.
I don't think that the White House should be in the business of unilaterally taking down
From their own
findings
website?
Not when they personally disagree with the findings, unless those people that authored the study have a reason to retract their findings or have some sort of methodological error that they find themselves or some sort of peer review comes in and sees an issue with it, then I could see the argument to take it down. But partisans within an administration, whether it be a Democratic administration or a Republican administration, should not be concealing data from the American public simply because they have personal disagreements with it.
Then I think this should be on every Democrat politician's website too.
What is this?
I'll read it.
Combined variance rates.
Combined violence rates.
Oh, violence. My. That's
Okay, but that's
so when you
okay.
reach my
Can I-
age,
can I
we'll
ask you
have the same
something,
issue.
Tim? Isn't that like a ChatGPT created thing?
This is a graph that I made, regardless of where it
Yeah,
came
but
from. What does it matter?
because
I
ChatGPT
made
makes
it.
a lot of mistakes. So I wanted
No,
to see what
it's
they
my
did.
data. I just had a graph made by GPT.
Oh, okay, what's the data?
The data is that when you combine the sum of all cities in the United States, you will find that Republican cities have 858 instances of violent crime, and Democrat cities have 21,765.
Okay.
Does the methodology matter or no?
Yes. Well,
Yes.
to me it does.
Of course it does, because we're being honest.
I'm a researcher.
But when the White House says we've got flawed methodology that claims a guy punching his wife is an instance of terrorism, that's not real methodology that informs
yeah, I
the
don't know.
American
Here
people.
you're talking about crime in like Democrat-controlled cities versus
That's what I
which makes kind of sense.
Violence
because
rates in
most
cities based on
are
political party.
Democrat, right? That's
That's not-
obviously.
When you say Democrat cities, like the mayor isn't a Democrat, is that?
Yes,
is
if the mayor and the
Because they have
police are
bigger cities
controlled
that are
by
controlled
Democrats, you'll see substantially higher crime than if they're controlled by Republicans.
Those are raw
Well, you
numbers.
see,
right?
Now,
you're going
there-
to see higher crime in urban areas and cities anywhere.
Indeed, and there are some conservative urban environments too, and they have substantially less
I mean,
crime.
I've seen a lot of analysis that really, if you just adjust by racial composition, there is actually no
Indeed.
difference. I mean, I think the question
My-
of crime
my-
is actually a very easy question. Is that we just need to enforce the law and put people in prison.
My point with this post is that the position that I occupy, which has typically been like moderate independent, but according to liberals is far right, is that there is a truth and reason, and we're trying to figure out how these things work and how we can solve for them. The problem is Democrats lie about literally everything, and Republicans are fucking losers.
But we
So
cannot
my
turn
point
into
is this.
liars either.
Well,
We cannot turn into
I'm
liars
amazed
either.
that-
I completely agreed. My point here, and this is factually correct, when you compare violence rates depending on the political party in the sum of cities, you find substantially more violence in Democrat-run cities. The perception of this and the proposed community notes is it makes people think that Democrats are individually as Democrats committing violent crime. The point of this, when I said, how fucking weird, am I right? When you get rid of fringe wackos and count crime by party control, which literally says party control, looks a lot different. Democrats lost their minds over this because this is true. Because when they create hate watch, like the ADL does, which I just showed you, they're going to claim that white supremacy is the same thing as Charlie Kirk.
Would you mind if I asked you
you
to
look
pull something up
unconvinced.
from...
Well, when Charlie Kirk kicked out a white nationalist from his event, when there's viral videos of him saying you don't belong here and you are anti-American, for what reason does it make sense to claim that Charlie Kirk is the same political movement as neo-Nazis?
I do remember,
Just if you wanted to pull this up, because this is by some of my colleagues that did an analysis on this at MI. Red State Violence, Manhattan Institute. And you'll find
You want to make a point?
Well, Chris Wray and the FBI at their annual report said that the greatest threat to
You can go to the
national
graphic
security
about
was
them.
right-wing white supremacist violence. But this was, by
That
the way,
sounds retarded.
But this was a few years ago. I do think that in recent years, I think that you have a point that you've seen a surge on the far left of political violence, and it's something that you have to take seriously.
I'm gonna make the point I made earlier again, just in this context. It's because you aren't paying attention to the ground. You are looking at top level national news and ignoring the thousands of blunt force terror that's been occurring across this country. So when you have Andy Ngo get beaten in the streets, it finally makes it to the national news, and this is why intentionally far left direct action facilitators, whatever you want to call them, try to avoid killing or maiming. In the violence they engage in, they want to punch you in the face and break your nose, but they don't want to kill you because that will make national news. So when you say, well, it used to be that the right was more, no, I've been on the ground for over a decade. For 15 years, I've been covering this stuff. And when I would go to a conservative event, see a bunch of old ladies waving flags, I'd be like, there's nothing going on. In fact, when I'd go to a white supremacist event, they would insult me and call me a global citizen for being mixed race, but not a one of them would put a hand on me. When I brought Daryl Davis to an event to denounce racism, Antifa showed up and threatened to burn the theater down. And when Daryl Davis said, this is what I do, I talk with extremists, when he went across the street, they threatened to kill him too. The problem is CNN won't cover it. The New York Times won't cover it. So then you, watching the surface level news, only ever hear about some fringe right-wing extremist and think, wow, white supremacy is bad. But how many white supremacists actually exist in this country? Hard data that we saw from Vox was that there's around 11,000 self-proclaimed white supremacists of any kind of organized faction. But there are hundreds of thousands, as we've seen from Occupy protests, from George Floyd riots, self-proclaimed left-aligned extremists. Now, I'm not going to say that Nancy Pelosi is a threat to my personal freedom or anything like that. I think she's a scumbag who's doing insider trading. Mitch McConnell, I think, is also a do-nothing scumbag. I think the Uniparty largely just wants to maintain the status quo, and they want to profit from it. But when you actually go on the ground to all the various protests and riots, what do you find? The left is more likely to beat the shit out of you, but they intentionally hold back from killing you. The right, like Charlie Kirk, the Turning Point, and Turning Point, as well as the Tea Party, you're never going to get physically assaulted at one of these events. Never. It's rare. In
people
fact,
are very nice.
At Patriot Prayer in Portland, when a guy showed up shouting the N-word, conservatives kicked him out and told him to get lost. When a white nationalist showed up to Charlie Kirk's event, he kicked him out. When Nick Fuentes tried getting into a Turning Point event, they kicked him out.